What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Loot Bros podcast. I have my good friend and host and creator, and there's got to be like a word that just sums it all up for the Godfo bro himself. I'm Resident Darrell, and this is Dan Evans. How you doing?
There's a lot of words for it, but I don't think you want them on your podcast.
Funny story about the podcast. I used to censor out all of the bad words, because I wanted to have a clean show. And years ago, I was friends with several GameStop store managers, and they would play our show on their little speakers and on their little iPods and stuff. Sometimes just on their phones in the GameStop.
Mm-hmm.
So I was adamant about editing out all of the bad stuff. So then my co-host at the time would make a point to say things that they shouldn't. And I
Yeah.
remember one time I was like, I'm gonna get real cute with it. Instead of just cutting it out, I'm gonna put sound effects from video games on it. And then so like one episode, it sounded like an entire Mortal Kombat tournament, just all this stuff. And then
Finish him.
yeah, and then they started talking about a Batman. Like there was like an image or something we were talking about for probably BVS.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was like the picture of him pulling out the gun or whatever. And it was
Yeah.
like, it's a bat dildo. And they just did this whole conversation about dildos. So every time I was, after that, I was like, you know what? The return for the amount of editing I'm doing, it's not there. It's not worth it.
Yeah.
So you know what?
Let it fly.
that's pretty much what it was, man. I just said, and then when I bring guests on, they try hard. They're like, okay, well, I'm gonna say poopy instead. And I'm just like, this is not you being organic. How about this? You do you, I'll do me, and we'll let it ride.
Yeah. That's the best way to do it, because otherwise you're not going to get people at their best and at their most honest.
Heck yeah, man. So, as per usual, guys, I've been saying this on the past few podcasts I've done, on the Patreon episodes and all that stuff. If you hear a lot of weird background noise, especially when I'm talking, it's because my jet engine that I have parked next door, there's humidifiers or dehumidifiers. There's 4 fans, drying up all the water damage in the house. So it's obnoxiously loud for me, but so far my noise reducer pretty much cuts most of that stuff out in post. So Dan, here we are again, coming together. You and I have been able to talk about the Flash trailer. We've been able to talk about the Snyderverse, the what if would have happened if the Snyderverse continued. So we've had some really fun conversation. We were able to coin and change the name for one of the Flashes coming up, the Blueberry.
Yeah.
Going back and listening to that made me laugh. The Frankenberry, that was really funny stuff. So I'm glad to have you on, and you are proposing a topic that I'm actually not very familiar with. So take it away.
All right, the topic I wanted to throw at you is it's amorphous and strange, and it's just starting. And it's kind of the reason it's kind of exciting and cool to me is because it's one of those kind of early internet things where you would hear rumors or like you know what I mean. It hadn't been aggregated and beaten to death and over analyzed to death, and that is and some of your viewers may be familiar with it, but it's the idea of the Iron Age. And long story short, it's to describe the modern age of media we're in now, where as an idea of people picking up the tools and building things instead of just consuming and complaining about them. So that applies to everything everything nerd culture, basically comic books, novels, video games, music, everything. And the first that I can think of, like the first mention of like the coining of the term Iron Age, I think came from Razor Fist, if people are familiar with him, the Rageaholic on YouTube. Whether you agree with his politics or not, the man made a great point with this, but people have picked it up and ran with it, and it doesn't have a singular term, or description. It's just a broad idea of, basically the internet's here. Every single person has the tools to make cool stuff. Let's get into the mindset to make cool stuff instead of ingesting crap.
Absolutely. That's awesome. It's funny you mentioned that. I was out this morning listening to a podcast. I actually was a guest on the PlayStation Collectors podcast. This week that we're in currently, but last week, episode 40, if you're looking. And the guest they had on this most recent episode, he did exactly that in 2020. He was like, you know what? I'm stuck inside. We're in the lockdowns. He was over in Australia, and over there they were, basically enslaving their people,
Still are,
and
yeah.
they still are. Got to have that blood pass. Sorry,
They have
but
Gollum as their prime minister.
that's right.
That poor woman. Yeah. Sorry.
but so but he said he likes to write, he likes to talk about video games, and he just started his own website, and then now he's got a full-blown review site with 8 different editors on, and writers underneath him. And it's, all fan supported. It's not like it's monetized through ads and things of that nature. And he's like, man, this thing's growing, it's doing well. It still harkens back to the age where people actually like to read,
Mm-hmm.
because like, hey, these are all written reviews, they're not scored reviews. And I thought it was really cool, man. I was like, man, and I was just taking it in. I'm like, I mean, that's what I'm doing. I'm over here, not to any one degree, but it's like we all have access to write music and record music. We all have access to do podcasting. We all have access to do YouTube. And it's funny because on one of my screens right here, I've got my latest YouTube video that I'm working on, and it's just like we have access to everything. It's crazy.
Well, I guess that's the thing. I'm so glad that you were on board to talk about it because, like I said, it's amorphous. But I don't know. That's what gets me excited is talking about these kind of big ideas, and I don't think I'm alone in that. I think YouTube has proved that the average person is way smarter than we were told by TV and by academics for like 30 years. And that's a whole other thing I'll get into. But the condensation is that. I mean, it, what happened was because you and I and Josh come from music, and if any of your listeners come from music, musicians knew this first because musicians were getting replaced first. The synthesizer replaced musicians. Producers consolidated and they replaced musicians. Like you could get an artist to go work with one producer. He's not paying any other musicians. He's doing everything himself from a laptop. And then that got consolidated into record labels. And they're like, well, there's like one producer for an entire label, an entire stable of artists. That's that consolidation and down and watering down had happened in music before it happened in anywhere else. And we see stuff like AI art, and I'm not ripping artists because I can't draw and I need them, but like people were freaking out. It's like, man, musicians went through this already. We went through Napster. We went through everything. Like welcome to the 80s.
I would say auto-tune is a whole. It allowed a whole group of people who were not musicians to be musicians because it's like like me. I would love if I could sing, Dan. I would. I would not be here right now. I'd be singing somewhere right freaking now.
Yeah.
I'd have my guitar and I'd be singing, but I can't sing. God was intentional about not giving me that because it probably would have changed. He probably would have ran my life. But that being said, like there's a whole age of musicians, and quote now, that like autotune has fixed that for them. It's like they would have never made it.
Well, no, and that's what's going to happen with AI art and Chat GPT is a few are going to consolidate the part to the top and be working for corporations. Like, why would you have 17 journalists when you can have 3 that can use Chat GPT to write articles that no one cares about because they don't care if they can churn out cheap and get profit for doing the same thing because we've accepted just, and I'm not going to go into whining, and enough people know about it, but we've accepted such a low level of art and creation that we've allowed ourselves to be replaced by computers. Well, kind of like the idea like with the IronAge and this kind of stuff, we were talking about with like your friend or the person you knew with the website. That gives me so much hope because we grew up at the time when websites existed. The internet wasn't just social media, and I mean, I discovered like a Marilyn Manson fan site a couple of weeks ago that was still up, and it was the coolest thing ever. I'm not even a huge fan of his, but the level of detail and love and spider web of connections that went through it, you can't get at Wikipedia. You can't get at a curated, aggregated source. Like I found people that influenced him that you're not going to find these guys anywhere, and if you did, they'd get canceled immediately. Like, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So that's what it gets me excited about this idea of the Iron Age. It's like, and this is what we were talking about with Godfo for like 10 years. It's like, no, we want like a hub of our stuff that it doesn't, because when you're on Twitter and YouTube and Facebook, you're screaming into a void. And not only is the void like cavernous, but it also has tentacles and it chokes out anything it doesn't like. And that's what is needed now is people saying we'll build our own website. Like was it Futurama where he's like, I'll build my own casino with hookers and blackjack or whatever, or my own theme park. Yeah.
Excuse me, where exactly on the body is the moneymaker located? That's like one of the best lines of Futurama.
Well, I mean, that's what people have to get to because like artists, actual artists, no matter, here's the thing, man, for the future, no matter your political affiliation, man, you're gonna get squeezed out because it starts as the excuse now, what people call woke and all this kind of stuff. It's not what people think it is. It's all for profit and it's all for efficiency. These are just excuses that companies are using to squeeze out people who won't just do what they say and do what they do, no matter what political affiliations they have. Because you really think that these people at the top of this really genuinely or care this much about these political things? No, they don't. They do not. They will do anything and say anything. This is how sycophants and narcissists work. They will do anything and say anything that benefits them, and they'll adopt any credo, and they'll squeeze out anyone who doesn't agree with them. This has been the battle for artists forever, from day one, and you got to go your own way. If you can get 100 loyal fans, man, you could build an entire. You could not only just a supplemental income. You could build your entire. You could replace your current income if you had 100 loyal fans and you kept them fed. You can do anything. I guess it's so easy to get disheartened. Like I said, with musicians, we saw it first. Everybody's a musician now. So the standard goes down. Everybody's a podcaster now. Standard goes down. What I would love to see is everybody's a movie maker now, and the standard goes down because that's what's going to happen. But even when that happens, true artists can come through. You don't need a studio anymore, man. And this is why so many, I know I'm on a rant, but this is why the fight for the internet is so important because that's what they're going to try to do is shut down everything to like 4 sites that they control. And when that happens, it's like, okay, well, we'll go do a different part of the internet. But the idea, the hope with the Iron Age is maybe we can build something before that happens, or maybe even prevent it from happening. And you can have pillars that don't answer to anybody, that the internet then, I say the internet, quote unquote, companies can't argue with, and that some of the revenue even depends on. So you can't squeeze them out so much. And
Well, if you look at the video game industry for an example, right? Years and years ago, when I first really started paying attention to things, you had your IGNs, your GameSpots, your Game Informer, and you had like your big outlets, and all news was filtered through them, right? And then from those places, they podcasts and kind of started to spring out where it was like we're going to really direct our focus and niche, and that's how I got into podcasting altogether. It was like a PlayStation podcast from IGN. All while in the background, YouTube is surfacing. YouTube's coming up, and you got these young cats coming on there, and they're playing video games and they're talking about video games. Fast forward 10, 15 years, I mean, now these outlets are legacy outlets and they're going away. Everything they're doing is spitfiring and churning out, clickbait. And so that people
about the young guys that replace them.
That's right. That's right. That's right. And so it's so funny because I'm watching these legacy quote outlets go away and their relevance, disappearing. And like even me personally, I will go to a podcast before I go to a website, and it's just like the way things have changed and my interests change and my the people I go to change. Now, a lot of the people I listen to and a lot of people I follow in this content creation age, it's they cut themselves off. They cut, like when, there was a certain point where everyone chose a side.
Yep, Gamergate helped.
Yeah. And then when they chose their side, a lot of their content and their direction focused so much on their political, this is my side, this is my stance, and it veered away from what made them an quote artist in the field in the first place. And then these young cats are just like, nah, man, I'm just going to talk about games. I'm just going to talk about games. I'm just going to do game stuff. But before you know it, now that's who I go to. And that's who I listen to. And it's the same thing with music, man. Like it used to be when I started in music, especially when I started playing, the record labels, they controlled everything. They had the keys to the castle. Me coming up, it was like holy crap, the only way to be a real musician and a successful musician is to get signed to a label. You gotta get
Mm-hmm.
signed. You gotta get signed. It was like this rat race, this to get signed. And then now it's like, I don't know, dude, 2006, 2007 ish. I was using Mixcraft and Beatcraft to learn how to, you know what I'm saying, make music,
Mm-hmm.
and Audacity to record. You know, I was learning to demo on those platforms. And then now it's like you can do everything. I mean, like a dude with a MacBook and Pro Tools can make the best sounding music
Well,
that's available now.
well, and that's the thing is they because the leaders, quote unquote, the record labels and the producers, because they started lowering their standards to basically a computer. That means once everyone knows that's the secret, they can do it. It's not Rick Rubin or who's the guy that did, Brian Eno that has their specific equipment that they had that they captured their sound. Mm-mm. The record labels created their own problem, then complained whenever the secret got to everybody else, and that's exactly what happened with news, especially, and that's what Gamergate showed us is that these guys are all just they're just taking their orders from the gaming people, whoever pays them or whoever sleeps with them, quite frankly. And it's like, well,
True.
anyone can do that. And then, like we just said, like it becomes clickbait. It becomes like, oh, they're just stealing what someone on a podcast says now. And it's like,
Yep.
okay, well, if that's all it takes, anyone can do it. Well, what do you do in that situation? Well, a cynic says, well, everything sucks. Just go do that and make your money. An artist says, let's pick up the pieces and let's forge something new. Let's forge something that's not easily ripped off. And that's what has to happen because the Iron Age and AI go hand in hand. And while people are freaking out over AI, it's like go pick up and make something AI can't make. And it's limitless what they can't make. I mean, even if they get as good as a lot of people in 50 years, that's still a 50-year span for you to get ahead again. Like there's nothing that has encountered mankind that the human imagination can't get around in some way or another. And I think this, I know I'm rambling a lot, but if you have a materialist worldview, strictly materialist worldview, AI will drive you to self-delete in Minecraft. But if you have anything, and that's kind of a cool, interesting part of all this, if you have any kind of belief in the human spirit, even from a secular point of view, if you have any kind of religious point of view, this should just be lighting a fire under you to go forge something.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's so funny because like I started using Chat GP and all that stuff,
Yeah.
just kind of playing around with it because one of the things we're doing with in the mortgage world is, you know, obviously blast marketing, and we got to have catchphrases, we got to have things get your attention because, you know, 99% of emails don't get clicked on. You know, a lot of the social media marketing, I got to tell you a story about a guy here in just a second for social media marketing, but like a lot of that stuff, you just scroll by it, you
Yeah.
got to get someone's attention. So what I do is I'll sit here on my origination time block and I'll go, okay, here we go. I've got 5 realtors in mind. I will need to write emails specifically to them. Here's what I'll do. So I'll bring up Chat GP or whatever, GPT or GTP,
I
whatever it's
probably
called.
said it wrong too.
OpenAI is what I'm using, all right? But it's all the same thing. I'll go to OpenAI and I'll go, okay, I am this, I do this, come look at these, boom, and it'll fart out an email, you know, and I'm like, okay, you know what? Copy that, put it in the email. Let me change it up, make it a little more humanistic, a little more personal, and then boom, go, boom,
Hmm.
go, boom, go. And I'm starting to use it as a tool, as a time saving measure, because like when I'm trying to originate for mortgages, I need to do social media, I need to do email blasts, I need to be on the phone, and I need to find a way to do all that in a short amount of time.
Hmm.
And I was talking to this guy yesterday. I've been talking to a lot of different brokerages and retail outfits, just, you know, exploring what's out there. I'll just say that. And I talked to a guy and I said, man, you must have FU money. I said this to him in my little interview. And he goes, why you say that? I said, because you say whatever you want on Facebook and you don't care who's paying attention. I said, everyone else in the professional world is scared to death to
Hmm.
even be found following a figure on the right side. And yet you are blasting the left with everything you got. And I said, that, you know what that tells me? That tells me that the person you work for isn't scared of the cancel culture mob. And B, you're not scared of it because you got money and you ain't worried about them taking from you. And he started laughing. It really broke down the professionalism of the
Yeah.
interview. And then we were able to talk like
Yeah,
real
like
people.
people. Yeah.
And I really got a lot of information out of this that I really, really appreciate. I needed this. And he said, man, I got to be honest. He goes, it's twofold. He said, part of it, it's a social media marketing. You know what I'm saying? Like
Mm-hmm.
the algorithm, it'll churn you up and spit you out. You know what I'm saying? Like you have to combat the algorithm. So he's like, so like you might go, oh, you know what? Hey, Fisher guys, look at me casting my reel. Look at me fishing. By the way, I do mortgages. Hey, look at me fishing,
Yeah.
and get the interaction. Oh, look at me, I'm a car guy. Like for me, when I started off advertising in the mortgage world, I went to all these like musician groups and metal groups. I'm like, hey guys, I listen to Five Finger Death Punch. What do you guys do for a living? And then everyone starts talking. By the way, I do mortgages. Oh, you do mortgages? I'm looking to buy a house. Yeah, they call me the metal MLO in my group. You know what I'm saying? Nobody calls me that. I just said it.
Yeah.
But anyways, I started doing that and just, whatever. I don't really listen to Five Finger Death Punch, by the way. Although I've seen them live and they're actually really good. But so I say all that to say, he goes, well, it's twofold. A, he goes, I feel like I was the only person who knew the truth and I was screaming into a void.
Mm-hmm.
He goes, but B, it started to trigger the algorithm because I was triggering people. And he said, so I would go and say something outlandish, about the Democrats and the left. And he said, and people would get on there and fight with me.
Mm-hmm.
What that did was it added engagement.
Mm-hmm.
He goes, that engagement. Then he goes, a couple hours later, I'll go, hey, my name's such and I do mortgages. And he goes, now I'm on all your feeds. He's like, now people that that have argued with me or commented with me or tagged someone in my post, now they see it.
Yeah.
And he goes, so it's twofold. He goes, A, I feel like I'm fighting the good fight. And B, also, he goes, apparently there's around 89 million of us that think and believe a certain way. He's like, so if I could get 1% of 89 million, he goes, I could retire. And so it was pretty smart, but that was his thing. He chose to break out of the machine, and stand out. He did it with the political side of things, but I thought it was just fascinating because I'm like, if you think about it, we and this is going to sound super tinfoil hat and super, it's going to make me sound a certain kind of way, but you know what I mean? Because we're speaking as creatives. We are like, as a collective, as people, we're cogs in a machine. We're just moving and we're moving. Okay. Every now and again, one of us breaks out of the machine and says, I'm going to go do something different, And then everyone else who's in motion is like, no, you can't do that. No, you can't do that. We got to keep doing what we're doing. Got to keep churning it out. And I think that's the gift and the curse of the creative, the gift and the curse of the musician, the gift and the curse of the podcaster is and you and I have talked about this off air a lot, but it's like, I'll be honest, I'm going through something right now. And my wife kept telling me I was going through it, and I didn't. I was like, no, I'm fine. No, I'm fine. No, I'm fine. And you're like, you know what? I'm not fine, actually. There's something wrong. There's something wrong with me internally. And I think it's because I'm not fulfilled, and I'm not being creative enough, And you know this because you and I have talked. Some of us have to make something.
Yeah.
Some guys have to build things. Like, we talk about creative a lot in the art side of things, but like it's also the other side of the spectrum. Because like my father-in-law, if he's not working, he's in his garage building something, working on a car. It's like it used to be he would just build another garage for fun. The dude's got 3 garages in his house, at his house. I'm not kidding. And what he'll do is he'll build a garage and go buy a project car, put the project car in there, work on to completion, go build another garage, put a project car. I mean, I'm not kidding. He did it 3 times since I've been with my wife.
Man, that's awesome.
It is, but that's his thing. And it's like, now he's the old school, rough, tough country man that, can build anything with his hands, but he's just like you and me. If he's not doing something like that, he's going crazy. His mind and his body will not allow him to rest. He's got to create.
That's testosterone. Part of that's testosterone, not all of it, because there's women that do the same thing. But it's like like as far as dudes go, I think that's probably a problem with a lot of guys today. Is the reason you're like this, man, is probably because your hands are shaking because they need to grab and go do something. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but yeah.
Yeah, but I get it, man. I get it there. And so, like for you and I, we're always talking about music. And I think that's part of my problem right now is that like I've got potential and I've got projects started and I've got things, but I'm I'm not executing on those, and I think internally that's really starting to bother me. I'm doing the YouTube thing, and granted, it hasn't taken off and it hasn't turned in anything yet, but it's like it's growing. There's momentum, and I'm like, okay, now I've got to work that into my week, and
Mm-hmm.
so I'm doing at least a video or two a week. I think I'm going to do two this week because my last one didn't do so hot. But it's one of those things where it's like, okay, I now my last one didn't do so hot, and I tried something completely different. So now I'm going to go double down on the thing that yielded results the week before. But that's how my brain works. Is like I've got to be doing something. Same thing goes with the podcasting. It's like the podcast right now, we're doing the worst we've done since I started. You know what I'm saying?
You're
We
welcome.
Thank you. But I think it's a multitude of factors, right? And I was looking at my, I got an email and all this stuff, and I was looking at our traction and everything. I'm like, you know what? This has been on a steady decline for about 6 months.
Hmm.
And I'm like, I've focused on other things and I haven't really focused on this. And I'm like, man, part of me wants to just go like full speed and say, okay, no, we're going to flip this thing back and it's going to get better. And it kind of puts me at an inflection point where it's like, okay, it's time to change things up a little bit, time to rethink things a little bit. It's like, like I know what worked in the beginning, I know it worked in the middle, and then now here we are in another lull, and it's like, what do we got to do to spruce things up a little bit? So it's I've got the creative outlets, but I'm not firing on all four cylinders personally. And I
Yeah.
know, and it drives me insane. Like it drives me crazy. And so also I will say this, my job is super freaking stressful. And it's like it drains.
Mm-hmm.
So then I feel like I've got to double down on something that kind of refills the cup. And I don't know. I don't know where I was going with this other than like from a creative standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm looking at all the AI stuff, the AI art and all this stuff. And in my head, and I've heard a couple of different podcasters say this too, but they're like, there's going to be something about like non AI, like it's going to be a thing, it's
Yep.
like this to me. I don't look at it like this is the end of the world. There's going to be something special about this was hand painted.
Mm-hmm.
This was hand drawn, which that's already been a thing because people have been using computer aided programs for so long. But like that's going to mean more now
Yeah.
in the same way that physical video games, physical comic books, physical movies and media and vinyl, those things, they matter to a certain group of people because they are the tangible thing and you can see the craftsmanship, and all that stuff behind it.
That's where I was gonna go with this. And two things with that is what's gonna happen is with the rise of AI art, and as it gets quote unquote better at what it does, what's gonna happen is people are gonna use it and they're gonna make up justifications for it because people are lazy and people will make up a justification for anything these days. I was gonna give an example, but I won't because I'm trying to keep it kind of family friendly. um, but then there'll be people who react to that and they'll make entire careers off of trashing it. And there's, we see that already. But then there are people, and this is kind of what I'm getting from the idea of the Iron Age, that instead of reacting to it, instead of trying to argue with it, they just make better stuff. And that's what I want to be a part of because it's so easy. There's so much trash. I mean, some stuff you need to address. Some stuff is so offensive to the human nature and human spirit. I mean, Josh and I did a whole thing about basically the dehumanization and the anti-humanness of art recently, But like stuff like that, I was thinking about that, like physical media, video games. What's stopping? And I know this has been done before, but what's stopping like indie video game guys, particularly if they're making like 16-bit to 32-bit stuff, from putting out and selling like physical cartridges that can be played on a Super Nintendo or a Retron? You see what I'm saying? And I know there are companies that do that, but I mean, you could see a boom in that. Like, why even compete on Steam anymore? Especially since, as we've seen, that they're changing physical books now. Like Roald Dahl, what's his name? Roald Dahl, the guy who did Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. They're now printing his books with edited lines and works in them and stuff. man,
That's happening a lot on Amazon. There's
yeah.
Amazon. I've heard several different books, like the digital versions, have
Mm-hmm.
been altered. I mean, even Netflix altered Bill Nye the Science Guy. Whenever that old
Mm-hmm.
show got ported over, they took out the gender episodes and things like that because
Yeah, nothing is safe if it's
no,
not
no.
physical. So people are going to want physical. What I can't wait for is the New York Times article, or was it whatever the other one is, that's going to be like why owning physical media is fascist.
Oh, dude, why owning physical media is a sign of white privilege?
Yep, and that's, I mean, or
That's
white supremacy. Like that's going to happen.
Dude, I read
And
an article the other day. It was why owning a dog.
oh, I think I lost you for a second there.
Yeah, I don't know. It did that thing again. It's weird,
We can
but
just cut it back in. But you were saying something
that's
about why
fine.
owning a dog.
So what it is the program shut down because it's like, nope, this is
Yeah,
racist.
that's a they own physical media.
They own
I
physical
can see
media.
your books behind you.
He owns a dog, a golden retriever at that. There's no greater sign of white privilege than a golden retriever. But yeah, that was funny. I was reading this article, and my wife's like, "Why do you do this to yourself? You do this just to make yourself mad." I'm like, "It's like reality TV, babe.
Hmm.
You watch reality TV because it's a train wreck and you can't look away, and the cringe you're attracted to the cringe." I said, "I read these articles
Hmm.
because there are people in this world crazier than me, and it gives me hope that I'll be okay."
That, yeah, that my kid has to grow up in this world.
There's also that.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, there's another one too. One real quick. Well, since we're on the subject of it,
Man, just go for it.
maybe it's an AI bot writing all this stuff. That's just not. I mean, it's not real people. Real people don't think this stuff. But there was another one that said, "Cutting your grass, white privilege."
Oh, I saw that. I saw like I remember it was like a year or two ago. People were ironically, of course, when something does, I think super ironically, it means they actually care about it. It's about how like lawns are a sign of white supremacy and all this kind of stuff. And it was basically like Cincoism, which if there's any listeners who hasn't quite heard that term, go look it up. It was like how the commies tried to grow food using communist theory, and of course it didn't work. And it caused the starvation of like 40 million people. But all these articles were coming out. It was like, oh, you should let your lawn just go, and like weeds and like clover and all this kind of stuff. I was like, no, because you know what happens? Like it kills the lawn, and then those die, and then there's nothing but sand left. Like,
Well, it was funny because I was like, well, I got bad news for whoever wrote this article. I was like, I have two African American families living beside me.
yeah.
Both of them have better lawns than me. So the lie detector has
Or
proven
the
that this is a
or,
lie.
is the last name shaved into the side of the lawn?
No, no, that's actually my lawn.
Yeah.
Got a giant E carved into it. We're breaking stereotypes around here, bro.
Man, you should. Well, I think
Nah, actually, I did it in the backyard because I didn't want to get hit for cultural appropriation. So
that was
I
it.
put my name in the back.
That's I think people who write those articles and the kids that go to college, I think they just never met a single other person from another race ever, because the average person, like 99% of even America, does not care. Like everybody gets along pretty well when you go outside your house.
Yeah. It's got to be one of two things. Either all the people that do care gravitated to these particular positions so they could get their feelings heard,
Hmm.
or they didn't care, but the people that do care are the instructors in the universities, and that's what they're churning out.
Oh, Darrell,
Because
it couldn't be that, despite having 3 decades of literature pointing to that. Can't be that.
because it's crazy to think that like we're all relatively normal
Hmm.
and we live in a melting pot. So surely, we're not faking it through grade school up
There
until
there
college.
wasn't a single white guy that told me about Dragon Ball Z in middle school.
That's racist.
It's just the truth. I mean, that's how I made friends in middle school, because I was like one of like 3 white guys, and everybody was like, "Hey, you watch Dragon Ball Z?" Like, no, what's Dragon Ball Z? And then you get made fun of until you watched it. I get peer pressured into loving the things that I love now.
Hey, that's how you do it. That's how we should do things with games and music, and maybe I should peer pressure people into liking my podcast.
You should.
Like,
That,
you listen to the Loot Bros? No, what's
well,
wrong with
you
you, man? Are you
should.
stupid? What are you mental?
No, I mean,
So
that's the
go
thing,
ahead,
though,
Nick.
man.
You
No, it's just that's. you can only watch stuff get collapsed so much until you start making cool stuff. And there's so many cool people, and there's so much stuff. Like some people, even a lot. I mean, let's be honest. 99% of indie stuff, just like 99% of like bands, like indie bands, aren't great, and it's because they're trying to rip off, the mainstream thing. But when you get somebody that really inspires you, I mean, there's nothing that replaces the fire of inspiration. Like nothing, and it makes you feel terrible about yourself because you're not living up to the standard. But when you like, suck it up, you're like, oh no, I can do that too. And I don't know, but then you get to make something cool like that bridges across borders, that destroys all the narratives that we hear all the time that are trying to divide us. What really brings us together is the things we love. So you've got to make more things that people love because that's what brings people together. I mean, you go to an anime or a Comic Con or a horror con, like you go to any of those like nerd things that we call them. It's the most diverse place on earth. Like
100%.
yeah.
Dude, everybody there looks different. Everybody's dressed up even more different. Everybody's celebrating their thing. It's the wildest stuff,
Yeah,
man.
they leave politics at the door because
That's right.
you're here for the thing you love.
That's right, man. That's what's up. So I guess what I want to do then is I want to ask you what you're doing to combat the Skynet, the inevitable rise of Skynet.
I mean, that's what the Godfrey universe has always been about before we could even articulate it because we didn't quite see all this happening. But we were musicians. We saw the commodification of basically everything, and just to me, we just started with that punk ethic of we're gonna do whatever we want. We don't care. And did you see if anybody's ever saw like the Rush documentary Beyond the Lighted Stage? That's actually what's funny is that's how Gene Simmons described Rush, and he did it perfectly. He said they're fearless. They've never cared. Like they've always been fearless when everybody else was afraid. And I mean that's what we want. We want a hub, and it's not just that we get paid. It's just that we want people to come to us or like, here's our business model. I'm not a leftist or a rightist. I'm not a liberal or a conservative. I don't even vote, and I genuinely apologize if that offends any veterans in the audience. Like I'll gladly have that discussion. It's not a thing like that. It's not a disrespectful thing. It connects to my faith as a Christian. I genuinely can't figure out if I'm supposed to vote or not. But anyway, go on with that. I build our model off of guys like right-wing conservatives who lost their places on social media. I'm not a huge fan of them, but for some reason, people will pay to subscribe to them. And what they did is they went to a direct market. They said, we don't need YouTube, we don't need Twitter, we don't need Facebook. We're going to sell our product directly to people. We'll build our own hub where you come to us. Well, it's like, great. Let's do that with cool stuff like art. I'm not ripping. I'm just saying I don't necessarily agree with what they say, but those guys, I think, have pioneered how the future of internet business needs to be. And if you notice, that's the same pattern that guys like was it? I'm not a huge fan of them either. Nothing against them. I don't follow them. But like Comicsgate, these guys, the people that are kicked out of the public square, build their own public square, and that's what we decided to do to fight back against the Skynet of things. Is you've got to get out of Skynet. To get biblical with it, what does Christ said? Come out of her, my people.
That's right.
You get out of Sodom and Gomorrah. You get out of Babylon because you know what? Those things get so big that they self implode, or they get struck from the sky by an outside force, or the barbarians come through, and that's what's going to happen. These things get so big and so decadent. I don't mean decadent even in a moral sense, but so not even held up by humanity anymore. They get so overrun with their own hubris that they tend to collapse. And I think that's what's going to happen. You've got to go build your own cities. So that's what we're doing with Godfrey Universe. I mean, and not to plug our stuff because we plug it every time, but we got comics, we got novels, we got comics, we got novels, we got the Lamentation, like free blogs basically, and we might move that to a Substack eventually for more stuff. We got video games coming, we got short films coming. We want to be basically the MCU, but cooler and on a small scale with our stuff. Because the MCU sucks now.
Oh my gosh, it does. Dude, it's so funny. And I'm glad you mentioned the MCU. Because, like, I was listening to a podcast yesterday, and it was like, these are fanboys. These were guys who were just like all about it.
Mm-hmm.
And the fanboys are like, nah, man, phase 4 ain't love. Like,
No,
this thing happening right now is not good.
no,
And I
Kang.
was
No one
like,
cares about Kang.
but I'm like, good. I'm glad that I'm not the only one that's like says this is not great right now, because I really feel like it's been just a strong decline after Infinity War. Now I will say, Spider-Man: No Way Home,
Mm-hmm.
that was good. But we've talked about that already because
Yep.
that had a terrible plot.
It did, and it felt so it could have happened without the MCU,
Yep.
and that's
Yep.
why you did. That's why it worked.
Yep, that was good. So, as far as Loot Bros go, what we're doing to combat Skynet is very similar. It's, same thing, but like, and I haven't figured it all out yet.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the Loot Bros podcast is the hub.
Yep.
The Patreon is the place that we are being supported by our loyal listeners. And our Patreon isn't huge, but it's healthy enough. Like it affords us to do things. Whether it's ads in comic books. We put ads in some of the legacy comic books. But whether it's business cards, I don't think I have one here, but something I've been passing out literal hundreds of, are it's our logo on one side and then a QR code on the other, and it says "Scan here for a video game podcast with a comedic twist,"
Mm-hmm.
and it brings you to our link tree, which has our YouTube, all that stuff. And then I've kind of spun out a little bit because we have multiple different podcasts or whatever. But I spun a little bit, and now I'm trying to figure out the YouTube thing and focusing on my picking videos and reselling or whatever. But I'm trying to find a way to tie it all together, because everyone I talk to, I send them to the Loot Bros. At the end of my videos, it's the Loot Bros. It's all that stuff. So I'm trying to find a way to offer a lot of different stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and then working my way into games as well. That's
Yep.
something that I've got a couple. I've said this already. A couple of voice acting things lined up for this year, and I want to it's in my heart to do more. Like, what can I do to get more involved? Like, and right now, while I'm in this weird transition as far as work goes, I'm like, dang, should I just start going down that path? Should I be praying about that? You know what I'm saying? Because like, there's things that make me happy and there's things that pay bills, and I don't know that I've never been in a position where
Where they intertwine.
two are the same. It's always
Me
been
either.
the thing that pays. It's always been the thing that pays the bills also steals my soul. But yeah, dude, it's pretty rad stuff, man. That's always going to be me, and I think that's always going to be you, is making something. And my wife said this to me the other day, because she was getting on to me about the work situation,
Mm-hmm.
and I guess just because I'm kind of dancing around it, but I'm getting ready to make a bit of a career change. I just got into lending, and but I think I need to move to another area of lending that has more reach and more tools, and a little bit more structure. I think there's some gain to be had by doing that. So I've been exploring different outfits essentially, and I got to work with people that were like-minded,
Mm-hmm.
and I need to be in a place where I have the tools at my disposal to go out there and be successful. I'm not saying that my success is determined by what they can offer me, but there is an element of having a toolbox, knowing what's in the toolbox, knowing how to use what's in the toolbox. You know what I'm
Oh
saying?
yeah.
So all that being said, not to speak ill about where I'm at, but I think it was a good starting point for me. Now I need to go to the next level. That's kind of where. In the meantime, my wife's like, why don't you just go do something you love? I'm like, well, because what I love doesn't pay the bills. I was like, and she said this to me. This is the first time. Now, she said it to me in a very like stern and forceful way, but it was also one of the nicest things she's ever said to me, which is, my wife, that like, she's a dream crusher. That's what we call her.
Yeah, I feel that.
She's like, wait a second. You've never set out to do something and not been successful. She's like, you wanted to make music, you started a band, you played hundreds of shows, you did everything you said you were going to do. She's like, you wanted to do podcasting, you've been doing podcasting. She goes, you've got your own little Patreon, you've got all these other little shows, you guest on shows, you have people on your show. She doesn't really understand, what I'm saying, that it's still very, very small, and in her mind, you're doing it, so therefore you did it. And she's like, you wanted to do video game stuff. Now you're doing video game stuff. She's like, you've never like, she goes, you wanted to do YouTube. Now you're doing YouTube. She's like, didn't you just hit like 130 subscribers? I'm like, yeah, but that doesn't, it's not, she doesn't get it.
Yeah.
And it's okay. Um, and I say all that to say this, that was her way of saying like, if you just set your mind to it, you will accomplish it. So what are you doing here? Why are you spinning your wheels and second guessing yourself? She's like, you just need to put your head down and go do it. And she's like, if it's not this, then it needs to be that. But you need to get focused and do it. She's like, because what you're doing is you're spreading yourself across all these little things and you're not doing any of them well. I was like, you're not wrong. And I can't fault you for bringing, for that. She's right, And so, but like something's turning. I don't know. I want to do something that's going to be like, yes, like it gives you that gusto to just give it everything you got. I think you guys are doing that with Godfo right now. I think all it took was getting, one book out there.
Yeah.
And then that's just like watching you guys just fire on all four cylinders. I mean, like, look, you're putting out YouTube videos every day, you know what I'm saying? To fight the algorithm. So I think it's awesome. And I think that what you're doing is going to pay dividends.
Well, I want to hang out, talk, and make stuff with my friends and get paid to do it. And emphasis on the make stuff. Like I want to get up at 4, go to bed at midnight, and put in like 20 hours. I know my math's off, but actually maybe that may have been good math.
Actually, too. I almost checks out, yeah.
But and go to bed tired, I think, and then of course, spend all the time with my family I can. But I think a lot of people are afraid to do that, and afraid of work, and afraid of failure. I mean, the only way you fail is if you quit. But I don't know, man. I want to be able to I love hanging out and talking with you, and I think that so many people have so much more potential than they think, and I love the people that other people have overlooked. I love looking at someone, and I think that's why I love cons. I'm gonna tear up going to cons, man. Cause the first time I went to a con, I was like, this is worship, and it may not be what I think it should be directed at, but it showed the human potential. These people will spend hours building a suit, a costume for something to go to this place, like this mecca for something. And I'm like, this is what the human body and spirit is capable of. Like I said, I may not always agree that it's directed the right way, but it's like damn better than the eat the bug, sleep in a pod slob that we're heading towards and we're being told is noble and good. And it's not, humans are fire made flesh, basically. Like we have unlimited potential. And if someone uses that to build a Medico Magica cosplay and it's a 40-year-old man, I'd say more power to him,
I think you're right, man. And that was so funny taking my kid to this past little video game and anime con, and there's people in there who they probably got 40 hours or more.
And 40 grand in a suit.
Yeah. And the thing was this, they had a cosplay contest there, and there was a handful of people dressed up. But the thing is, like, they did all of that for a picture. But it showed, and that was again, that's that thing inside us. They had a desire to create this thing and to show it off. And that is the payoff. And that's something that my wife and I have always gone back and forth on, because she's not creative. She's administrative, not creative. Like, my wife doesn't make things. She doesn't do things for presentation. Okay.
Yeah.
So like, she used to come at me all the time, like, why do you want to play music so much? Is so you can be in front of people and do shows? I'm like, yes and no. But like, it's like the whole process. I don't want to just play shows, because if I just wanted to play shows, I would just go be in a cover band. I was like, I don't just want to play. I don't just want to sit here and write music, or I would just do a solo project. I've never ever launched a solo project. That's not what I want. I was like, I want to be in a space where me and other individuals are creating off of each other. We work to refine it, and then we present it. So yes, the show is inevitably the full circle. I was like, but I'm not doing it for the show. I'm not doing it for if I just wanted to play guitar, I would just sit here and play guitar. I got a freaking amazing guitar on the wall right there. But I don't touch it. I haven't been anyways. It's just because it's like, that's not That's not what it is. I don't want to do this by myself. That's like I didn't. It's like getting married and then living in different homes. That's not
Yeah.
what I signed up for, you know? And that's the thing about the podcast too. Like the only reason I haven't launched a solo show, the Resident Darrell podcast, or whatever you would call it, is because that's not what I wanted to do. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like I wanted to get on here with guys like you and talk about stuff and laugh and cut up, you know what I'm saying? And make and have fun, you know, and have that interaction and all that and that feedback because it goes so many different places. Like most of the time, I have an idea of what we're gonna talk about. You
Mm-hmm.
know, today I was like, "What do you want to talk about?"
Yeah.
You bring up the Iron
I
Age.
was
Let's
super
freaking
scared. I was like, I don't know if he's gonna want to talk about this or not.
let's go. Let's freaking go. I'll talk about anything. You know, and then like look at how much fun we've had. I mean,
Yeah.
it's already been an hour, and just like that, we both got to go back to work. So, but that's the thing is, I feel that when you say that you want to create with your friends,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I was telling a guy this week I was doing an interview for I was actually interviewing him really. We're having a conversation. Doesn't matter. Either way, my point is this. I said, you know what? We've talked for 30 minutes now, and I've mentioned all the logistical things that I think I need, but I didn't tell you that one thing I really want
Yeah.
in this industry. And he goes, what's that? And I said, friends. No, I didn't say that. I said, you know, I was like, I want to work with believers, you know?
Yeah.
I didn't realize how much that really mattered to me until I worked with non-believers.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not saying that like that's the deal breaker. But what I am saying is when you have like-minded people, you know,
Mm-hmm.
faith-based people around you, Bible-believing people around you, and you have a situation, you can go to that person and say, hey man, will you be praying for this? I'm struggling with this. Or how did you handle this? Or you know what I'm saying? Like there's just like that. I can't go to my lying, cheating, crooked business partner and be like, how did you morally and objectively, you know what I'm saying, fulfill God's promise
Mm-hmm.
in your life in this situation? Because that same person be like, I lie, I cheat, I steal.
Yeah.
That's like Eddie Guerrero over here. You know what I'm saying? Like it's just not, it's not there. You know, we don't connect
Yeah.
like that. And I spent 12 years, almost 13 years working with, you know what I'm saying, good Christian men. And you know, I was like, man, I was like, I can't. I'm not saying that's a deal breaker because I know that's not what I was put here for. I was put here to do the thing, you know what I'm saying, and glorify Jesus at the same time. That doesn't mean that like I just go out there and be like, you know, hey, look at Jesus, Jesus. You know what I'm saying? Like
Mm-hmm.
my job is to be a little more subtle about it, wise as a serpent, innocent as a dove. But in the same respect, it was like, man, God, it was so nice having that. You know,
Yeah.
so I was talking to the guy, and I was like, oh, that's what I want. Even in the professional setting, I want to make cool things with my friends,
Yeah.
and that translated into, you know,
Well,
put
people
people in debt.
people want cool things.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
this goes beyond, and this is we could go down a deep thing of socialism versus capitalism. But I mean but that's I prefer a system that lets me make cool things for people and then I get something in return rather than someone up top telling me what to make. But
Yeah,
um what I'm saying is more than even wanting to sell the cool thing, I want to make cool things because I want to see that look on someone's face when they like it. And I want to hear
absolutely.
I want to hear the poison when someone doesn't like it and they yell at me and I ignore it. Like a
I hate
reaction
your podcast.
a
You're
reaction is
racist.
better. Like a reaction is better than slob nothingness or just like dreamy heroin feeling of numbness. You know, I'd rather. What
Yep.
is it? It's been so long. But like that Brave New World with the end where he's like, I won't. I'm fighting for my right to be in pain or something like that. But you know, basically, like I'd rather be slightly disgruntled and hurt than live in numbness. I know I butchered that quote, but
That was beautiful.
yeah, but that's what it takes, man. And it's everything from every level of creation is pushing towards stagnation and death. And that's easy. That's just laziness. That's sloth. That's just stop, consume, enjoy. When what really this isn't to blow smoke up you, but like what really set me off in a good way for your podcast is like when Darrell talks about video games, when Darrell talks about movies, when things that he has consumed, he's turning it into art the way he talks about it. And because especially with video games, because like I've played video games my whole life, but I've never talked about them that way.
I get excited, man.
Yeah, I think that's what's fantastic though is like that spark that people listen for in this and in everything, and you see in their eyes, like that's what I think will fuel an IronAge if I had to circle back around.
You heard it here first. Resident Darrell Reviews coming to a podcast platform near you.
That would be fantastic, man.
I've kicked it around. I promise you I have. But again, it was always this thing of this. I do this with other people, but I have often, because like I've got thousands of games. I could just be like, dude, let me gush over this for a little while. And the best thing is whenever I love an objectively bad game.
Yeah.
And I've used this platform for 5-6 years now to say, sure, on paper, this game sucks, but my God, I had a blast.
Yeah.
Thank you, Gotham Knights. So, all right, Dan, it is quitting time. We both got to get back to work.
Yep.
I appreciate you coming on here. Guys, check out Godfoe Universe. Check out what Dan's putting out each and every day. 6 days a week you're doing this?
6 days a week. Monday through Saturday, I take off the Lord's Day.
That's right. It's a good Christian boy you are. That's right. He's putting out little videos, little clips, putting out full podcasts. Thank you, Dan, for coming on here. Again, I always put Godfoe links in there.
Thank you. I do the same thing for you on ours.
I appreciate it, brother. So, and then anything that we do together, you guys can find it on the Godfoe Universe, or you can find it here on the Loot Bros Podcast. There's no, we like to share around here. We're all in it together. So we got to take out Skynet. And Chat GTP. I got to figure out what that's actually called, so I say it.
Chat GTA.
That's what it is, Chat GTA. There you go. All right, Dan, I appreciate you, brother. You have a great day. And guys, thanks for listening.
Thanks, man.